talk about what's sacred in Sikhism. And Sikhism is another religion that we see come from India. Actually, today you would call it, at least in terms of its original origin, what we would call Pakistan, but historically India. And the God, and there is one God in Sikhism, and that's Wahguru. That's the God's name in Punjabi. Because another is, again, from northwest India, or again, today Pakistan. Developed, so not the Hindi language, not Pali, but Punjabi. Wahguru, also sometimes called Omkar. One God. As you see, this is actually from the Granth, the text. This being is one, truth by name, creator, fearless, without hatred, of timeless form, unborn, self-existent, and known by the Guru's grace. Okay, who the Gurus are in a minute. Wahguru. So God is, and even this symbol right here, this is the symbol for God. The Omkar. Right there. One God. What's this God like? Amazing. But completely formless. This God ought not be depicted and can't be depicted. You can't depict this God. It's impossible. Because it's formless, genderless. Even if you refer to the God as a he, that's not right. Like Christians do that, Muslims do that. As soon as you call God a he, you've messed it up. Oh, does that mean it's a she? No. Does that mean it's an it? No. It transcends those categories altogether. So you can't really employ any, and in the Punjabi language, God just doesn't have a gender here. For us, it ends up being difficult. Now also, this is an Indian religion, which means samsara is there. There's a cycle of rebirth. What we want to do to escape samsara, the cycle of rebirth, is mukti, which is related to the word moksha. Okay, same root. Mukti. How do we get out of the cycle of rebirth and become one with Wahguru? Through appropriate karma. What's appropriate karma? The stuff that we'll talk about in terms of getting at proper Sikh ethics. So some of the things that the specific Sikh practices will get at get the appropriate karma to get out of samsara. Okay. And samsara here, remember, we got for the Hindus, what's samsara and karma? It's to get out of the cycle of rebirth and become one with Brahman. For Buddhism, it's to get out of the cycle altogether and achieve nirvana. Moksha in Jainism is to get out of the cycle of rebirth altogether and not be united with anything. Completely get oneself out of existence. But here it's to become one with the God, Wahguru. Now, probably part of the reason why this religion is not as well known is it's very young. So it was founded by, we got the Guru, which means teacher, but it has a particular meaning in Sikhism, Guru Nanak. And the other 10 gurus, here they are, real quick, there they are. There are your 10 gurus in India. But let me show you when they lived, too. You'll notice our first guru, Nanak, born, it's guruship, sorry, 1469. So this religion is only about 5 centuries old. So it's very recent. So, like, even Buddhism goes back 2 millennia. Christianity goes back 2 millennia. Judaism, a little over 2 millennia. Some would argue 3 millennia. Hinduism, early Vedas, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, 3 or 4 millennia. Going way back. This one, even Islam, 1,500 years. This one, only 500. So this one's very, very, very recent. And it's impressive how many adherents we have. So we've got our 10 gurus, of which the last guru we see in the 17th century. You'll notice there's an 11th one there. So we'll talk about that in a moment. You notice it says, oh, when did this guru die? Forever. This guru persists. We'll talk about that guru in a moment. We've got these 10 gurus. Great. What did they teach? Well, what they teach can be found in this. This is the 11th guru, the text itself. So if you go back and take a look at that little chart there, this is it's called the Granth, or the Guru Granth Sahib. What is that? That is the principal text of Sikhism. And it's really the writings of primarily the last 6 gurus, but it also has some poems by some Hindu bhaktis. It's also got some writings from some Muslim Sufis as well. Sufism is the mystical tradition in Islam, which is why I think people sometimes conclude, oh, so it's just a mixture of Hinduism and Islam. No, it's doing its own thing. But there is kind of a awareness of other traditions too. We've seen that in India as well, where there's the acknowledgement of other traditions. Kind of going, okay, you're doing your thing. We've got samsara and karma too, but we're doing something distinct. So what's the Granth? This is the text. Like I said, and it's a compendium of those authors. As you see, there are also writings of some bhakti. What are bhakti? Those are remember, that's the worship of particular gods in Hinduism. So those that were devoted to, say, Vishnu in particular, or Shiva in particular, some of those authors. So here's a bit of text in Punjab. So you have an idea of what it's like, what kind of stuff we see in there. By his order, this is a 100-year-old translation in English, but you don't see too many English translations, so I'm just going to say this to give you a feel for it. By his order, whose order? Wahaguru, Ikankar. By his order, bodies are produced. His order cannot be described. By his order, souls are infused into them. By his order, greatness is obtained. By his order, men are high or low. By his order, they obtain preordained pain or pleasure. By his order, some obtain the reward. By his order, others must ever wander in transmigration. Samsara is the word there. All are subject to his order. None is exempt from it. He who understands God's order, oh, Nanak, is never guilty of egoism. So this is selfish. Just to say God is in control of everything. Okay, good. That tracks with other monotheisms. Continues. And also it mentions Nanak there. Nanak's not about himself or his own glory. The first guru. Some sing his power according to their abilities. Some gifts according to their knowledge of his signs. Some sing his attributes, his greatness, and his deeds. Some sing his knowledge whose study is arduous. Some sing that he fashioneth the body and again destroyeth it. Some that he taketh away the soul and again restoreth it. Some that he appeareth far from mortal gaze. Some that he is all-seeing and omnipresent. So what it's describing here so far is, look, a lot of people when they're describing God talk about different things. Yeah. So even when the Muslims talk about God, and when the Christians talk about God, and when the Hindus talk about Brahma, they're really all describing the one God. They're just a bit off, and that's okay. And we saw this, remember, in many Satanism and Jainism as well, where we don't have all perspectives. It's not quite that. It's that they're describing this. They're just not quite right, and that's okay. There's not that same kind of there's really a lack of dogmatism in Sikhism. There's a dogmatism for oneself, for the Sikhs, like if you're going to practice, there's things that you're going to do, period. But we're not seeking to make converts. As such, you don't have to become a Sikh. You do you. Because you're getting at the right thing, you're just looking at it from a perspective that's not complete. And that's okay. Some others say that he's all-seeing and omnipresent. All right, that's what some say. God's omnipotent, omnipresent. Millions of men give millions upon millions of descriptions of him, but they fail to describe him because God really can't be described. It's formless. The giver giveth, the receiver groweth weary of receiving. In every age, humans subsist by Ik Ankar's bounty. The commander, by Ik Ankar's order, hath laid out the way of the world. Nanak, God the unconcerned is happy. Okay, that's from the Granth. And really, it's talking about there different descriptions of God. Not going to get it right. So really, in Sikhism, there is really not a robust metaphysical tradition of talking about what God is like. It's very short. Like, God is formless, the creator, amazing. God is a guru itself, a teacher, wondrous, happy, joyous. That's what God's like, and it stops. Well, does God have infinite attributes? Really not concerned with that. God's happy and good. This Wahaguru. And you should be too. So in the Granth, we also see some rituals, as you might expect. First of all, let's talk about what we just saw there. This building, this is an example of a Gurdwara. That's a Sikh temple and a place of gathering. And perhaps one of the, now sometimes a Gurdwara will have like a library and an office and all kinds of facilities like you might see at a church or an Islamic community center or a synagogue. But something that's particular to Sikhism, that's one of the main things in the building that almost all of them will have, is a langar where vegetarian food is made available for everybody. Oh, for all the Sikhs? No, for everybody. So here I am going to play a clip. Main thing going on in the Gurdwara, what you just saw there. Now, like I said, you can that's one in India, but you could find one in the United States. You can find them in Europe as well. There's a huge one in London. What do they do? What you just saw. What did you just see? That looks like it kind of looks like an open kitchen to everyone, except that's just it. It's open to everyone. Is it for the Sikhs only? No, anybody's welcome whenever you want. And some of them run 24/7. You want food, you can come in and have as much as you want. It's not, oh, no, you can't, no refills, right, whatever you want. Why? This is, especially in Sikhism, one of the acts of service. This is how you achieve karma and escape the cycle of samsara, in service to Onkar. What's that? Being generous to others. That's one of the main goals in Sikhism, is complete generosity to one's community. To Sikhs, surely, but to everyone. And so everyone is welcome. Muslims, Christians, Hindus, it doesn't matter. Come on in. Have as much food as you want. It's vegetarian food, mind you. Have as much food as you want, because there won't be the sacrifice of animals. That's one aspect. But so much energy is put into that. Well, how do they pay for this? That's what the Sikh community uses their money for. And everybody there that you saw was a volunteer. It's not a separate clergy as such. Everybody's involved, working together. Some were washing the food, some were making the food. Those are the biggest pots I've ever seen, all right, for cooking. All right, I've been in a lot of kitchens. So that's one thing. What else do they do? There's the Kirtana, the meditation, recitation, study of the Granth. So they get together and study the text that we've already talked about. They get together in Sangha, which is related to the word Sangha or Samga in Buddhism. Except we're talking in Punjab now. There's a lot of getting together. Community is considered very, very important. Okay, especially amongst the Sikhs themselves. Okay, a lot of community stuff, and a sense of family. And then this is what you saw here, the sewas. And you even saw that, like, the people working in the kitchens, we kept referring to them as sewadas. What are those? The volunteers. But all kinds of voluntary service. It could be anything. You need help? We're here to help out in the community. That's what I say with us. Okay, but this is something every Sikh is supposed to do, without any expectation of reward, as it says there. So we're doing this like, all right, I helped you move your stuff, pay up. Nope, I'm going to do this. Why? Because that's what Wahaguru would have me do. That's what we do. And so there is also the sense in Sikhism too, of joviality, being in a good mood all the time. It's helping everybody else. You want to be good to the community? Put a smile on your face. And not a fake one either. All right, I've waited tables before. Hey, how are you all doing tonight? Right? Not that. Like, really, be in a good mood. Be of good cheer. Right, when you're out and about in your community. Do whatever you can to help other people out and make them happy. That's really one of the general modes here. And what you'll see too, now we'll move into stricter Sikhism. That's a general attitude. For those that are going to be practicing Sikhs, there are what are called colloquially, the Panch Kakar, the 5 Ks. because, at least in English, these all start with a K. So these are the particular practices of Sikhs. Every Sikh will subscribe, every person who's a practicing Sikh will subscribe to these. These who have taken the vow to this will do this. First of all, kesh. What's that? Uncut hair. So Sikhs will wear turbans. So the turbans? Okay. This is where I think some of the misunderstanding comes in when someone sees someone in a turban. They're like, "Oh, look, a Muslim." Some Muslims will wear head coverings or head wraps, but not a turban. The turban is associated with Sikhism. Why? To cover one's hair, which is not cut. So you don't cut your hair in Sikhism. You keep it growing, but you keep it covered, so it's clean, because that's meant to be something that's cherished. It's considered a gift of Wahaguru. Don't cut it ever. But don't get it dirty either. That's why it's very carefully maintained underneath the turban. Okay, and that became a big deal, as it says here. Bhai Taru Singh was executed. Actually, he was scalped by the Mughal emperor. The Mughals were an Islamic empire in India. Aurangzeb. Because he was like, they said, cut your hair and be a Muslim. Convert. No, I'm not going to do that. Hair is something precious given to me by Wahaguru, so they scalped his head. And so that became like not cutting one's hair became very particular to Sikhs in India. Again, in India, we see this conflict with Islam, with the other religions in India too. Here, we'll even see an army. There's a Sikh army that formed to protect against the Mughals. But not cut one's hair at all. Furthermore, that's the first thing, not cutting one's hair, that's kesh. Then there's kanga. So one will always keep on their person a small wooden comb. For what? To maintain kesh. Hair is meant to be kept, like, it's not visible to other people. It will be kept under the turban. Even little children will do this. Little turbans. So that hair is going to be maintained. It will be under the turban, but it will be kept entirely clean. Then also, you'll see this a lot too. The kara. And actually, let me go to kirpan first, and then I'll come back to kara. Kirpan. Every Sikh carries on them a very small sword. Now sometimes it's very, very tiny. It might be, I think you might have seen it in there in the video where they were offering food to the guru, about the size of a butter knife. Okay, that one. And even, there are, like, Sikhs in this country, there are some Sikhs that are in the US military where they actually have provision to wear a turban. Sometimes they'll be in camo, right, for Sikhs serving in the United States military. They will have on their person a tiny kirpan, even if it's just symbolic. Okay, and not really sharp. Every Sikh carries a blade. Even if it's a symbolic blade. For what purpose? Originally the purpose is to protect others. Not just the self-defense of oneself, but like in a chivalrous sense, to care for those that can't care for themselves, and it is not to be used in anger. You see that? Okay, so everyone carries a sword. Now, traditionally, when you go back to the 1600s, bigger swords. Today, sometimes the sword is just symbolic. Okay, tiny, but it's not meant to be used to attack, but to defend. So, and that comes from something that I'll talk about in a moment, where the Sikh community came up with its own defense force to protect against, especially Mughal invaders here in northern India, which today Pakistan. But so also, let me go back to Kara now. There's also often a bangle that's worn on one's sword arm. If you're right-handed, so the purpose of a bangle, we've got jewelry, of course, but the purpose of an actual bangle is to sort of block a sword attack. If you time it just right, you know what you're doing. You can block a blade with an appropriate bangle. That's the point. But you use that, and just as it has no beginning and no end in circularity, that represents one's union with God. And then finally, kachera, which are very humble undergarments that one wears. They aren't remarkable, and they're meant to, the intention there is to not kind of provoke any kind of sensuousness. Okay, don't be overly, there's a sense in which a Sikh should not be overly sensuous, focusing on hypersexuality or something like that. Sex is fine and good and all, but don't overdo it, because that'll distract you from things. Not today. And so we have this notion of the community, the Khalsa. Now, traditionally, the Khalsa refers to like the Sikh army, but there's also a sense in which it refers to the Sikhs who have devoted themselves to Sikhism. So you can be a Sikh and subscribe to some aspects and still be considered a Sikh, but for those that have taken particular vows, the strict vows, you can refer to them really as the Khalsa. It originally goes back to those who were soldiers. So everybody, and this is another thing, kind of like Buddhism, where there's a democratization going on. Everybody's equal. Is there a priest as such? Nope. Men and women are equal. You even saw that in the treatment of people coming to the langar to get food. Everybody's the same. There's no first in line. Everybody's treated equally. So there's also a sense in which there's not a prioritization of really even Sikhs ourselves as such against other people. We're all equal. All human beings are equal. But in-house, everybody's treated equally. Men, women, doesn't matter. If you're in India, it doesn't matter what caste you came from. If you're a Kshatriya or a Brahmin, it doesn't matter. Everybody's treated the same. Like I said, we've got that actual military order here too, which is also, you might see the word Khalsa dropped for that, referring specifically to a military order that was meant to protect Sikhs in northern India from the Mughals. So, what are some of the ethical principles in Sikhism? First, wake up early in the morning, probably to recite aspects of the Granth. Wake up early also to bathe. Cleanliness is very important in Sikhism. You notice there too, when people were going to the langar, did you notice there was a little pool when people were walking in? People wouldn't just take off their shoes. There's a little pool where people would wash their feet before they get in. Why? Because cleanliness is considered very important in Sikhism. Washing oneself constantly. You have a God-given body, take care of it. Be clean. Third aspect is to engage, and I've already mentioned that Sikhism really focuses on the familial. Family is important, and I don't mean family in some Shakespearean sense of defend your clan, but family in the sense of doing stuff with your family, your children, your parents, your spouse. That should be your priority, like just enjoying life with them. And your friends too. All that stuff is very important. Working for your community and your family. Earning a living through earnest, taking care of your family, but also working hard. And also using the money that you got to take care of others. Where did that money for the langar come from? From Sikhs themselves. It doesn't just come into being. That those resources are devoted to that, to feeding everyone. And also be a part of your community that you find yourself in. So in your neighborhood, take care of it. There's other people around you. And a couple other things that are in here too. So, washing one's mind. So one of the things that accumulates good karma is just working for the community, being a sewa, a volunteer, is it's basically how one cleans one's soul, one's atma in Punjab, one's soul. You want cleanliness of body, you want cleanliness of mind, help people out. When you don't help people out, it's almost like your own identity gets dirty and besmirched. I like this. Here's a command, an imperative. Become a Jiwan Mukta. So, two terms are hiding in there that we've actually come across before in Sanskrit and Hindi, but here they are in Punjabi. Jiwan. So we talked about Jiwan before. What's a jiva? In Jainism, that's just a consciousness. So you can use it as like in the sense of like soul or person or individual. And then mukta, again, that's related to moksha. So what does this mean? Basically what is moksha? Well, that means often gets translated as salvation or liberation. Be a free human being. One who is free. Liberated, that's what it says there, liberated yet alive. And become a free person not constrained by your own desires. Okay. Loving others, taking care of each other. And what does it mean to be a free person? In this sense, it means I'm not enslaved. No, it means this freedom in the sense of being able to devote yourself to all and everyone. Being kind to others, kind to your own family, and kind to one's own community as well. Some things that are forbidden. Don't do stupid stuff. What does that mean? Don't engage in the superstitions of other religions. That's what's meant here by that. It's called sometimes non-logical behavior in Sikhism. So, the Hindus are going to some temple to worship something that Vishnu did thousands of years ago. No. They can do that, that's fine for them, but you do not participate in the superstitions of other religions. Okay, that goes against what Lama Guru would want. They can do it, that's fine. And you can tell them, you can even tell your friends who are in other religions, you can do what you want to do, but I'm not going to do that. So don't engage in other practices. This keeps a kind of purity in Sikhism itself. Don't go on a pilgrimage either. And do not fast in a religious manner. So if you're trying to cut back on calories, that's fine. But like in Jainism, where there's fasting unto death, or in certain kinds of Hinduism, listen, that's not getting you closer to God. That's just making you hungry. According to Sikh, that's why, one of the things they do, it's not, they don't get together and fast, there's food every day for everybody. Provided. So food's good. And you shouldn't, all you're doing is making yourself suffer when you do that. Life should be happy and good and fulfilled. And you should be fulfilled too. So that whole, trying to, starve yourself, don't do it. Again, it says that for medical reasons, like you need to cut back on calories or something. That's one thing. But don't fast for religious reasons. And are there a lot of religions that fast? Yeah. Jainism is definitely number one in this department. Also aspects of Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam. Nope. Especially to the point of really feeling some kind of pain. You're not doing anybody any favors. Other things. Don't bathe in a river. I like that. Why? Rivers are dirty. Swimming's one thing. But to clean yourself, don't go in the river. These are unclean practices. And I don't mean unclean in some moralistic sense, like you shouldn't do them because they're bad. You shouldn't do them because they're dirty, like circumcision. Slicing part of the body. Don't do that. That's like cutting one's hair. Don't do that either. You're slicing up part of the body. All kinds of other practices too. Gambling. Listen, if you're gambling money, that's dirty. You might go, how is that dirty? Dirty one's mind. If you're gambling money, you're not putting your money to good use. You're not helping out the community with that. You're trying to get more money for yourself probably, but then don't be consumed with yourself. That's bad karma. Worship of graves. What does that mean? Well, think of how many worship of graves, including in certain aspects of Christianity and certain aspects of, say, Hinduism. There's a lot of places where there are tombs or places of worship. Don't celebrate the dead. Oh, this is where Saint so-and-so died. Great. They're not here anymore. Focus on the living. So really, a lot of Sikhism is about living life. Focus on the alive. I got Islam. In Islam, where one has to cover one's face. Now, one should cover one's hair, because one's hair is a glorious gift from God. But where you have a hijab or a burqa, that should not be made compulsory. Don't do that. That's dirtying oneself. Everybody has a beautiful face. It should be out there to be seen. Don't do that. So don't make women cover their faces like you might see the Mughals doing. Maya. Now, Maya just means illusion or delusion. Don't do things that come out of, you could say, ignorance or stupidity. Trying to make a bunch of money. That's delusional. Trying to because you're not helping anybody. I know sometimes when you have a bunch of money, you're thinking, what can I do with it? But collecting money, even if you don't have a bunch of wealth, you have a bunch of imaginary stuff. Good for you, that maybe you'll get to spend on stuff for you. Okay, so the accumulation of wealth. Now, you should take care of your family, you and your family. Sure, you should take care of your community as well. Don't be in it for you. That is delusional. Stop it. And also, this worthless talk. Don't say bad things about people. Like, gosh, did you hear that so-and-so? Don't speak ill of other people. Because as soon as you do it, that's also a kind of delusion as well. Bad behavior. Be of good cheer constantly, speaking good things. All right, it says in the Granth there, your mouth has not stopped slandering and gossiping about others. Your service is useless and fruitless. So when you're the kind of person that just is griping about other people all the time, talking behind their back, the good things that you do are not good deeds because you're constantly griping, whining, and complaining. Also in Sikhism, no intoxication of any kind. What does that mean? No consumption of any kind of drugs or like recreational drugs of any kind, including, say, tobacco and alcohol. Just no use altogether, no intoxicants, nothing that alters your mind. Because you can't be you if you're under the influence of something else. We see this here too. Adultery. If you're married, be faithful to each other. Lust is something, and this is why the special undergarments. Don't be lusty. Okay, if you entertain that, if you really start to have a kind of inordinate passion for sexuality, that's gonna lead you astray and accumulate bad karma. Just stop. It's not that sex is bad, but a over sumptuousness and sensuousness is. It'll mess you up. No sacrifice of creatures. You know, they did offer, you saw there in the Langer, they offered a little bit of food to the image of the gurus. Not that the gurus' images are worshipped, but this is like, here you go, this is for you. Like, it's symbolic, like a little cutting off the blade there. That's for you. Now we feed everyone. So that's symbolic, but no sacrifice. We're not gonna, like you might see in ancient Israelite religion. Like here, we're gonna cut the ram and throat and burn its entrails. None of that. No sacrifice of animals nor humans. You see that what we have like in Jainism. Oh, let me sacrifice myself to have absolute ahimsa. People throwing themselves into funeral pyres, sacrificing animals. Nope, none of that. No sacrifice of animals whatsoever, including humans. And for those in the Khalsa, absolute vegetarianism. So the strict Sikhs, no consumption of meat whatsoever. And it goes in with the sacrificing of animals. Don't do it. It is forbidden. You know, if you can be a Sikh who hasn't taken the strict vows, it might be okay. You should probably avoid it. But it's okay. But for those who have made the vows, you cannot be a recluse in Sikhism. Now this goes back to the focus on community. So, are there any monks? Are there Sikh monks? Nuns? Yogis? No. Whether it be living in sort of like a community of monks or like a hermit. There are no hermits in Sikhism. What do I mean by hermit? Some old guy living in the woods by himself. There is no by yourself in Sikhism. Everything revolves around family and community. So you can't go off and do your own thing. First of all, you're not doing anybody any favors literally when you do that. And if you're consumed, then you're consumed with self. Everything should be for a function of family. Or I'll take a vow. I was talking about how over hypersexuality is disdained and frowned upon. But sexuality is good. Like, you should have children and reproduce. Okay, so I've taken a vow of celibacy. What kind of nonsense is that? How can you have a family with that going on? So you can't do that. No vows like that. So no monks, no monastic vows. Everybody should be involved in family life and community life. And then finally, experts. There's no priests. There's no clergy. A lot of it's in the household. Yeah, there's a sense in which this is similar to Hinduism, where you might have a bhakti or a priest in Hinduism, but there's a lot of it can be done in the home. This is very family oriented. There is the Gurdwara that you can go to, where all the Sikhs are coming together. But really, a lot of the stuff what is the practice of Sikhism? Just happens in the household, at home. So now we're going to something that starts in China, but is not relegated to China. So Confucianism, or in Chinese we call it Jixia. What does that mean? Well, the teaching of Ji. What's that? It's not a name. So Confucianism in English, for whatever reason, it bears the name of Confucius. Well, what is it? There he is, Master Kongzi himself. So, Jixia starts with Kongzi. Okay, who's that? So Kongzi. And sometimes you'll see this in almost every Chinese figure that I'll talk about has this z on the end. And that just means it's an honorific. It's like Mr. So it's almost like it's saying Mr. Kong. Okay? It's kind of like in Japanese, san on the end of the word. Okay? Z. Okay, so Kongzi, what does that mean? Master Kong. Or in English, for whatever reason, in Latin, we get Confucius. Kongzi. About 2,000 years ago, so here we've got another one, about 2,000 years old, a little over that. And like I said, it starts in China, but Confucianism has had a huge influence into East Asia in its totality. So going into Korea, into Japan, into Southeast Asia, places like Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, where there's Buddhism too. So there's a lot of confluence of Buddhism and Confucianism to the point where sometimes people have a hard time distinguishing them in Asia, East Asia. They are distinct. They're distinct traditions, but there's a blending of them in certain ways. And Taoism too. That we'll probably be talking about next time. Such that really what you see in, say, Japanese religion is a particular combination of Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism, all simultaneously. Now by that I mean, these religions are not mutually exclusive. So you can be a Buddhist and a Taoist and a Confucian at the same time. Whereas it's very difficult to be a Christian, a Muslim, and a Jew at the same time because of the belief systems. So these belief systems are not really divergent from one another. They can get along in different ways because of how they're oriented. To the point that people sometimes say, are these really religions? They sound more like philosophies or ways of life. It's just non-Abrahamic religion. But it's also, we saw a similarity in the Indian religions. There's a lot of shared elements, even where they're distinct. Like Sikhism is not Hinduism, which is not Jainism, which is not Buddhism, but they all have the concept of samsara and karma and dharma. Like another name for Sikhism is Sikhidharma, the way of the Sikhs. And so there's shared ideas, just like in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. There's a lot of shared ideas, even though they can all be absolutist and mutually exclusive. In Confucianism and Taoism, there's some shared ideas too. And Shintoism, which we see in Japan. So, what I'll say here is Kongzi wouldn't have seen himself either as the founder of a philosophy or of the founder of a religion as such. All he says is this: in ancient times, things were awesome. There were great kings who were amazing, and everybody flourished. And they had Tian. What's Tian? That is Tian Tang, the blessing of heaven. Sometimes you'll see this translated as the mandate of heaven. They have the blessing of heaven, the mandate of heaven. Everything's going great, and then what happened? Kings started getting greedy. Conquest, ravenous for stuff, overly sensuous, and they ruined it for everybody. The good kings fell, everything decayed, and so now we find ourselves in a position which in China at the time was called the Warring States period. So there's not one China. There's all these little different kingdoms that are all at war with one another all the time. And so things are bad. But it didn't used to be this way, says Kongzi. In fact, everything used to be quite peaceful back in the good old days. What has changed? Well, for Kongzi, the main thing that's changed is there's been a complete disavowal of the familial relationships that ought to be. Ming. What's a Ming? That's a name. Ming. Ming is like a name, a role, a responsibility, a job. What we need to do is we need to bring back our proper names, our Ming. That's the word Ming here, Chinese word for name, but it means like role or responsibility. What kind of roles or responsibility? The ones that we have in the family. If we rectify this, if we can fix this, we can get back at getting that mandate from heaven. And so this is not a God, as such. This is like just like a divine blessing, though. We'll get back to getting this right. So we need to rectify this. And so he calls this the Zhang Ming. What is that name? What is that? And Zhang means like to fix. So Zhang Ming usually gets translated, as I have up there, the rectification of names. But really it's the recalibration of roles. The fixing of jobs. What jobs? Your family jobs. Family and community. Because we get these things out of alignment. And what we can do here is we need to get back into alignment our familial responsibilities. And he says that there are basically 5 relationships. Or 5 types of relationships. Now, Confucius and later Confucians all couch this in masculine language. You need not. You could put feminine analogs in there too and it works. But he says here's the 5 basic relationships. And they're actually all variations on the same thing. Really the first one is the example of all the others. So what do we got here? The rectification of names. The father-son relationship, so parent to child. Now these are two-way relationships, parent to child, but also child to parent. And there's others up here too. The older sibling to the younger sibling, the spouse to spouse, older people to the young people in a community, and then the ruler to the subject. And in all 5 of these relationships, you have someone who's in a superior position and someone who's in an inferior position. And the superior is not, that's just the way the relationship works. It doesn't mean the superior is better than the inferior. They just find themselves in a different position. But really, you can just look at that first one, and that first one is a model for all the others. The father-son relationship. In fact, like the ruler-subject relationship is actually just an analog of that. It should function the exact same way. But he looks at that first one and says, this is the one that's the most broken. This relationship right here. Father to son. Now, again, it's a two-way relationship. And like I said, you could put this, you don't have this, he's relegating it to masculine language. You need not. You could have mother-daughter. You could have father-daughter, mother, what have you. It works. He's saying here's what's wrong with the world. This relationship is messed up. Because what do we hear? How do fathers treat their children? How do parents often treat their children? Terribly. It shouldn't be this way. Parents ought to be kind to their children. Now that doesn't mean overly nice to the point where you can get away with anything. But you should start from a position of kindness. That doesn't mean you can't discipline your children or something like that. Whatever that means. But it has to start from a position of kindness. If it does not start from a position of kindness, you're doing it wrong. Similarly, that's the way a ruler should act. A king should be kind to his subjects. Okay? Not wanting to abuse them or misuse them. Right? Treat them, not children in the sense of being pedantic, but like in the sense of caring for people. But that should be the parent's position, and that's the duty parents owe to their children, is to be kind to them. Children, on the other hand, are to be pious. And really, Confucius spends a lot of his time talking about this. Filially, what does that mean? This is an adjective. This is a really fancy Latin adjective for sonly. Okay, sonnishness. Son in the S-O-N. Okay, from filius, which means son in Latin. So, to be pious as a son. This is the one we got to get right. Parents are having an easier time being kind than children are doing this. So what does it mean to have filial piety? Be a good child. What does that look like? Obedience to one's parents. Loyal to one's parents. To the point where now, you might think, well, okay, well, how do children do that? There's a sense of dignifying one's parents. And it doesn't just mean as like little kids. Like little kids are obviously learning, right? Because children can be stupid. Well, we've all been there. It also means this into adulthood as well, right? Taking care of one's parents. So like when your parents get old, like, sorry, Dad, I can't do anything. You're stupid, I hate you. Nope. To honor one's parents even later in life. But also, stuff like this. There's this part in the Analects, which is one of the big books of Confucianism, where this duke brags to Confucius. In the way the Analects, which is one of the books of Confucianism, Kongzi goes around from town to town telling the ruler, here's how you should act. And they're all like, please leave. Okay, they don't kill him like they did Socrates, but it ends up being very similar. He goes around, no one wants to listen to what he has to say. Well, there's this one duke that's bragging to them. Guess what? In my town, where I rule, I have children that when their parents commit crimes, the children will turn in their parents. And it's awesome. And Kongzi is really upset by it. He's like, this is like the worst thing that you could possibly do. Like, even if a parent does commit a crime, children should be loyal to their parents, not ratting them out. There should be a family loyalty there. Now, when I say crimes here, I'm not talking about murder. But like, you know, maybe my father ran a stop sign. I'm going to rat them out. Well, guess what? Let me call the police and tell them that my parents committed these little infractions. No, you shouldn't have a desire to want to have your parents be punished. Now, they should be kind, for sure. But just to do that, Kongzi says this is terrible. Having children turn in their parents, it would be better for some things to be gotten away with. Right? That pursuit of absolute justice is far less important than proper familial relationships. That's Kongzi's point. So, like you have your kids turning in parents, you're not ruling effectively. That's dangerous, harmful, and frankly sad, is what Kongzi says. Now, that's not what the Duke wanted to hear. But that's what Kongzi says. Nothing is more important. Nothing is more important in our practical everyday lives than to really be good children. Because that's what they were doing back in the day. And we've lost that. We've lost that. But all of this, even these particular relationships, are a part of a theme of we need to do things correctly. Now, not merely in our religious ceremonies. Sure, those things are important. We'll talk about those next time. But not merely that, even how we conduct ourselves in everyday affairs. We have a tendency to be lazy. Stop it. Everything matters. This is what Kongzi wants to stress. Everything matters. Nothing is unimportant in our daily behavior. So this is why you can have in China, it's infused with Confucianism. You might have heard of like a Chinese tea ceremony. Well, what are they doing? They're just getting together drinking tea. What's the big deal? Because Kongzi says everything's a big deal. You don't. Well, what does it matter? You just pour the tea, stir it around, put some sugar in it, drink it. Everything should be conducted in an appropriate way. You should stop and consider what you're doing because everything matters. Now, in order this kind of behavior to act in a way that everything matters is what it is to be a junzi. You want to be a junzi, which is usually translated as, in English, it's old school translations, it's always translated as a gentleman. Literally it means actually with a childlike obedience. But it's usually translated, I think better in English, as the superior man or woman, the superior person, the person who gets things right. It literally means something peculiar. But we'll translate it as the superior person. But if you get a translation from 100 years ago, it'll always say the gentleman. Someone acting in an appropriate way. Be a junzi. Don't be a xiaozhen. Don't be a xiaozhen. What's a xiaozhen? Literally a tiny man. Okay, so you've got gentleman, the superior person. Be a superior person. don't be a tiny man. So and really in the sense of like, you should be a human being, but it's almost like you're like an action figure walking around. Like it's embarrassing. Okay, don't be this. Be this. Be a junsi. Don't be a shalaja. Okay, so what is a junsi like? One who does things the appropriate way, all the time, in all manners. So we see this here. This is actually straight out of the Analects. The junsi, in regards to what he does not know, shows a cautious reserve. So starting with this, don't open your mouth when you don't know what you're talking about. Now, do we like to do that? Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, so it's probably this. Shh. Stop. First of all, slow your roll. You should probably stop speaking altogether most of the time. And have you ever found yourself in a conversation where someone's talking and you're not listening to what you're saying, you're just waiting for your turn to talk? Have anyone ever done that before? My turn. Yeah, Kangxi says, stop that. Show reserve. If names be not correct, that word there is ming. So, if people are not acting the way they should be, like they're not acting like the proper father or son. If names be not correct, language is not in accordance with the truth of things. So if someone's not acting with the right roles, we're talking about things incorrectly. Things are not being taught correctly. If language not be in accordance with the truth of things, affairs cannot be carried on to success. So what he's saying here already is, if we don't get our roles right, our familial roles, everything else will be out of alignment. So if we can't get the basics down, I can't treat my son correctly, I can't be kind to my children, or if I'm a child, I can't be pious towards my parents. If you can't get that right, nothing else in your life is going to go right. That's why it says, proprieties in music do not flourish. There will not be peace in the land if you can't get your own household together. When proprieties in music do not flourish, punishments will not be properly awarded. When punishments are not properly awarded, the people do not know how to move hand or foot. Therefore, a superior man, a junzi, considers it necessary that the names he uses may be spoken appropriately, and also that what he speaks may be carried out appropriately. When what the superior man requires is just this, that in his own words may be nothing incorrect. So here it's talking about, if you don't get your language right, language in terms of, when he talks about language, he's talking about getting how we understand our roles. If we don't get this right, we mess up everything else. So if we don't have a sense of, I'm a subject, I'm supposed to be loyal to the king, and the king doesn't care for his people, who can I torture today? If that's the attitude that we've got, if we've got that wrong, nothing will go right in the kingdom. And if I can't treat my children correctly, the family isn't going to work right. If the children aren't being properly pious, nothing in the family is going to work right. So we've got to rectify this from the outset. If we do that, that will lead to other things. But on the whole, we want to be after this, to be a superior person, to be a junsi. And he's going to say the way to do that is, this is the whole Zhengming, that's a starting point. We've got other things that we've got to get to, making us act in a manner of propriety. And that's where I'm going to go next, this concept of Zheng.